Michael Dunn said he feared for his life when he shot 17-year-old Jordan Davis at this Jacksonville convenience store in November 2012. The confrontation began when Dunn asked the teen and his friends to turn down their truck stereo.
My rearview mirror was shaking. My eardrums were vibrating. I mean, this was ridiculously loud music.
We as Americans are more than a bit touchy these days when it comes to our own personal security. Threats from terrorists, homegrown killers of every sort, deranged individuals who want nothing more than to hurt someone and get their 15 minutes of fame. But when you add legal weapons into the mix, those perhaps looking for a confrontation, and kids who do nothing wrong than find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, the recipe for disaster is heightened. Which brings us to the Florida trial of Michael Dunn and what it says about the law and our own fears. Welcome to Midpoint, former federal prosecutor in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, George Parry. And she's an attorney and youth mentor who served 3 years as an elected official in Jacksonville, Florida, Chelsi Henry. I thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Chelsi, because you're in the Jacksonville area, came from the Jacksonville area, let me ask you first. Michael Dunn, 47 years old, spends the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole for fatally shooting a young man who was unarmed in a parking lot over loud music. Did the punishment fit the crime, and are the people in Jacksonville now satisfied they got exactly what should have happened?
In this case, you know, it was justice delayed, but not justice denied. And so Jacksonville and the entire country saw justice served by a jury that listened to the facts, that listened to the arguments on both sides. And when it was time to deliberate, in less than 6 hours, which is 1/5 of the time that it took the first trial, deliberations, and they came back and did not rule on the first-degree murder, justice was served, and that's the bottom line.
George, any doubt in your mind whatsoever that justice was served here?
No, not at all. The defendant claimed that he believed that he was under imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury, but the police found no weapon in the possession of the decedent. They found no weapon in the area. Plus, the behavior of the defendant following the shooting, that is, leaving the scene and not reporting the matter to the police, certainly indicate to me that he had a consciousness of guilt and that he knew that he had done the wrong thing.
George, as you look at this again from the outside looking in, do you then see this as a racial incident, that this happened because this was a white man who was in fear of his life from young black men and simply just reacted violently?
Well, everything that I've learned about this defendant indicates to me that he had anger management issues, that he was a very arrogant individual. He believed he was smarter than everybody else. So if there's a racial component to this case, possibly, but my read of not only the testimony given by this defendant, but from all that we have learned through the news media, is that this guy had some serious issues with aggression, and he could have wound up shooting a white kid just as readily as he did with this unfortunate young man.
Chelsi, from your opinion then, arrogant, racist, or both?
I think definitely arrogant. I mean, that could be seen on the stand. Is there a racist component to this? Absolutely. I believe that if Jordan Davis and his friends were not of African Americans, could this have played out differently? Absolutely. From the time he pulled up, he told his fiance at that time, that, he couldn't stand this thug music. And so the connotation with that is that you see a car full of young African American men and you hear their rap music and it's automatically thug music. And look at where we are today, where he was convicted of first-degree murder. So I would say both.
The thug music thing is something else that we could go off on. That could take hours because certainly there's been a lot of discussion about that. But Chelsi, what does this then say about a nation then? Because let's be very honest and frank here. There are many white people who fear groups of young black men. Music blaring, they fear them. We see a lot of times, you'll see on the news, you'll see young black men arrested for violent crimes. You'll see young white men arrested. But is there not that stigma that sits there? And it certainly is understandable from some people's sides. You don't have to agree with it, but it's understandable.
Absolutely. race still has and racial tensions still are alive here in America. I mean, we have previous cases. We look at Michael Brown, that case is still continuing. You look at Eric Gardner, whose life was taken there in New York. Racial tensions exist. And so this case does allow the African American community, my community, it gives us some hope that even though the justice system may not be perfect, the justice system still works. Because in this retrial, the majority of the jury was of Caucasian descent. And so that shows us that, you know, it's not the makeup of the jury that counts. It's the ability of the lawyers and the facts presented, and to allow these 12 Americans who have spent their time and who have spent their time in the courtroom to decide during deliberations what way they should decide on the verdict. And so I think that this is the beginning of something new and something we need to see across America to restore the hope within the African American community of our justice system.
George, about 90 seconds left here. What is not new here is the stand your ground laws that were used as a defense here. Are we going to start seeing, and perhaps should we start to see, the erosion of some of these stand your ground laws?
Well, the stand your ground laws really had nothing to do with this case.
Right.
The defense here was whether or not the defendant reasonably believed that his life was under an imminent threat, or whether his safety was under an imminent threat. That was the whole defense. If you reasonably have that belief, all the stand your ground law stands for is you don't have to retreat. But this was really not a stand your ground defense. They may have argued that, but it really had no application to this case. The whole issue was whether or not the defendant had a reasonable belief. And based on all of the facts that came out at the trial, it's clear to me, and certainly it was clear to the jury, that he did not have such a reasonable belief and that his use of deadly force was unjustified.
I'll get a yes or no answer from you both right now, simply because we're all out of time here. George, stand your ground laws, they need to go?
No.
All right, Chelsi?
No.
All right, there you go. Those are from two people who know it. Certainly they're important, and listen, we need to come back and revisit this again, because I get a feeling that these laws are going to be under assault and perhaps may change indeed. I thank you both for your very blunt comments and your very honest comments. I'll look forward to speaking to you both again.
Thank you.
All right, later this hour, the FCC has the NFL in its sights, but can they call the name Redskins offensive without thinking about everything else it said on television? And after the break, Outland has no trouble finding the dumbest criminal caught on video. It's coming up right here on Midpoint.
Hawaii health officials keep watch on a patient who may have Ebola. I'm Miranda Khan, and this story tops your Newsmax Now update. The unidentified man is currently being held in a hospital's isolation unit while they test him for the virus. Former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay says the case against him was a political witch hunt. DeLay appeared earlier today on Newsmax TV. Yesterday, he was cleared of all money laundering charges. Virginia police turned to drones in the search for UVA student Hannah Graham. The main suspect, Jesse Matthew, is in court today on a separate charge. And the streaming service Netflix will bankroll 4 feature films produced by and starring Adam Sandler. The movies will premiere in the 50 countries where Netflix is live. That's your Newsmax Now update. More coming your way in about 30 minutes.